page about this, you know, on some wiki, and it's really easy creation. And people create wikis all the time. Like, I can write a code, I can write this, so there's like hundreds of different wiki softwares and hundreds of different, thousands and millions of different wikis about lots of stuff. And that's part of the draw, you know, so that it's like there's a tension there, you know, there's like you can start things easily and do things easily with Wiki, but well, we want you to work together, you know, like that's where the real juice comes in, that's the real power when it comes in.
But all the smaller wikis that I have known intimately, the administrator is near nervous breakdown trying to manage the span to keep the thing running. There's advertising going on the site, says it's a precarious installation, it could go down, they're that desperate they need to put advertising on the site. So I worry about the longevity of those projects and
but don't you worry about the Wikipedia? Don't you worry about the project being hijacked so it can't meet your goals?
Yes, but
so that's a trade-off.
Less compared to an administrator just not being able to keep up with the span.
See, that's what bothers me. I wouldn't use Wikipedia because I couldn't trust them.
Well, I mean, I can trust Wikipedia in these range of projects. If my expertise were in climate change, Nazism, and all those things, yeah, sure, I wouldn't trust those spaces. But in these little pockets, I can. In university pockets, I can trust them in terms of sport research and things like that. But when it comes to ethical breaching experiment, I can't trust that. So, you know, it's not quite overall. But what definitely the biggest problem to me over many experiences has been the project is technically not being able to be maintained. The span is overwritten, the servers are slow, the advertising is all over the space, the spammers have got in and whack porn all over the place, and they can't raise the money, whereas the Wikimedia Foundation raised multi-million dollars and sure.
But they're not going to play with you. I mean, how you've tried to talk to them, they haven't talked back to you. They haven't come down. I mean, they have. I mean, to a certain degree, they have, and they will if you try. But they're not always going to be able to help you with your goals. Where if you do your own thing, you can.
See, what just Lee and Laura just talking about it is I can hear Lee's critiques and issues, but the problem with the immensity of Wikipedia is almost its size is almost a problem in itself.
You mean the Wikimedia Foundation project?
No, hang on. Sorry, I'm just talking about Wikipedia on the part of somebody contributing. Okay, it's very easy to pick fault because it is just so big. Invariably, you're going to find crazy editors. You're going to find issues which just never seem to get cleared up. But and I know that in a lot of contexts, people don't like hearing good stories because they obviously spoil the various axes that people have to go on. But coming from a particular state, coming from an experience of 3 different projects internally. Internal projects inside English Wikipedia. I've seen absolutely what I could call nothing better than brilliant collegial cooperation, creating a really sound body of really well referenced, really well organised articles in relation to some aspects to do with Indonesia, to do with the Death Project, and to do with, which I've had quite a lot to do with, and also the West Australian one. The West Australian group, when it came to the 10th birthday a few weekends ago, we probably had the best meeting of the country, from what I can tell. And we actually meet up socially. We've actually created a sustaining group, which has created a project of the largest state of Australia, and has done really well. I'm sorry, it goes against all the bad bits, but there are parts to it. It's like a secure tech.
Totally, and that's what I'm trying to say. It's a secure tech, but it's just so massive. Invariably, you're going to get crazy users like David York in Sydney, or Science Apologist, or all the weirdos who come in. If you've got so many damn editors, that's always going to be a problem. That's the risk. But I think it's a small risk. Right? If your contribution to whatever project on the Foundation wikis is potentially in a controversial area, it's a risk to go into this space. If it's not, if you're just working on sport research units or postgraduate informal learning and stuff like that, they're not going to...
I think the implication, though, is those of us that fork or do our own wiki projects don't like Wikipedia, and I love Wikipedia. I think Wikipedia is fantastic. It does fantastic things. It's just not for me. I mean, and that's what I feel like I'm kind of, as someone who doesn't use Wikipedia that often, who doesn't like using Wikipedia, I kind of not I find when sometimes I talk to Wikipedian, diehard Wikipedians, that I'm almost being attacked. What's wrong with you that you can't accept this wonderful thing? Hey, I think Wikipedia does fantastic things. I think Wikia does fantastic things. But at the same time, I hate them at the same time.
Yes, and no argument there, just probably the final word on me is there are cases where it's clearly not a right match, but there are way more cases, including the Australian education system setting up their own wikis and struggling to keep them going. Why do that? I mean, for a start, you've got engineers could go into Aquapedia, but then Aquapedia could come into Wikiversity, and we can really pool these resources and have a lot more of these experiences being talked about here. Sure, there are many examples where it's not going to go, but there are way more examples where I'm seeing double handling, reinvention of wheels, over-expensive resources. But
That's the web.
That's IT. We can do a whole thing on that separately.
It's humans, not the web.
I think also that in terms of like that merging from tiny projects to larger projects all the way up into like media level projects like Wikiversity, some of the clearest benefits that you talked about, like the overcoming the spam issue, having more than one admin pulling the hair out. Once you get to the level of something like Aquapedia or even a bit smaller than Aquapedia, you know, we've got the resources to handle spam, and we don't have a big spam problem. You know, we could do with more help so that we handle it better, but we're sort of beyond that level. There are projects, someone says, oh, let's do a green energy wiki. So they started up, nothing, maybe there's 100 pages or maybe there's 3 pages. It disappears, the work is lost. On Wikipedia, you know, we have a weekly now published publicly, and you know, people are downloading, that sort of thing. So to go that final level, then there seems to be a trade-off, you know, which we can talk about. Mention some of that, but yeah, I think where it's really critical is to not set up, is to think about the basic things you need for a sustainable wiki, and that means you need 4 or 5 dedicated people. You know, not one person who thinks it's a great idea. You actually need a big enough community, and you need to realise that you know, I actually disagreed a bit with who said that it's like any volunteering project. I actually think the ratio of people who commit to wikis is a lot smaller, and maybe that's part of the modern culture where people expect just expect that you go to a site that gives you free information, and you know, maybe it's one of the